Morning, everybody. Always good to start with a tongue twister this hour in the morning. A number of times, Phil, I think you're called Rich, and I'm called Phil. Anyway, so we're here to talk to you about data strategy. And, I think we're not presenting the answer. We're not presenting, there are no one rings to rule them all when it comes to data strategy, but hopefully we'll connect a few neurons for you and give you a few things to take away from our experience of pulling together a data strategy for Jisc. And perhaps also we'll make a few other connections. I was talking to Richard from Activate Learning earlier, and he said, well, my IT team say, well, we get the network, but what else do you do? What do you do with data at Jisc? And hopefully through today, you'll learn that actually the answer is quite a lot, actually. So this is what we're going to cover. And much like the two hobbits in Lord of the Rings took us on a journey through Middle-earth, Phil and I will take you on a journey through our data strategy. We're going to start by taking you across the Atlantic to look at what's going on in the US. Then we're going to come back and reflect a little bit on the data officer role, which is new. It's still new in education. Less than 5% of attendees here today have actually it's 1.377%, and I include myself in that, have the role Chief Data Officer. So it's still new for higher education. Then we're going to look at some of the tools that we used on the Jisc side to help us unpack strategy and some of the challenges. And the things we want to leave you with. I think there were two things that I wanted to leave you with from our presentations. The first was, as Heidi said, we're all in this together and the importance of collaboration to get where we want to get to. And the second is value, is to start to shift our thinking from burden to value. So, starting across the Atlantic, although some of you may feel like you spent too much time in there on your news apps recently, anybody heard of Educ Course? So Educ Course, much like Jisc, a member organization for the furtherance of education in the US, support their members by producing an annual report on the top 10 issues impacting education. And this year, 2025, sees data and the data-empowered institution topping the list. So this is data to support student outcomes, data to support enrollment, data to support funding, and data to underpin efficiency. All things that I'm sure will be motherhood and apple pie to many of you in the room. But the other thing that I was interested in when I looked at this was this comment here, where in the report we start to unpack and they start to challenge the distinction between what is technology and what is the data job, the data role, and hammer out the difference between the two. And Phil, by the way, is a good one to talk to on this. Phil has technology and data in his role and spends a lot of time at Jisc with a foot in both camp, keeping people there on technology and keeping people there in their data worlds. So, chief data officers, as I say, they are relatively new. My view is I see a lot in banking. I think it's a well-established function in banking. Our relationship managers tell me that we've got around, we think, 20 of our members, 20 of our member organizations have data officers now, but Jisc has one. ONS, the Office for Students, now has a data officer. And while we might not have chief data officers, what we're also seeing is people with the data leadership role in some of the big organizations around our sector. And what draws them together is a focus on these sorts of things: strategy, analytics capability, governance, data architecture. But strategy, linking data strategy at an organizational level. And we're going to hear later on, sincere thanks to Monica from Leeds, who is going to give us a sense later on of what Leeds are doing from a chief data officer's perspective. I think what I wanted to look at was how, as a data officer or a data leader, you might look to bridge the gap between data and the business. And when we started to do this, we found this tool, which is available online. Harvard Business Review has a fantastic resource. This tool and some supporting material that you can use to work your organization through. And what this tool does, this is not a data maturity model, which many of you may be familiar with. This covers the same sort of capabilities, but what this does is it splits the focus down between defensive approaches to data and offensive approaches to data. And on the defensive side, you see capabilities that support data privacy, compliance, protection. And what you might see over here are things like a single version of the truth approach to, this is what we call the customer. The patient's heartbeat was 180. They've had their medication at this time. So you'll see hospitals here, non-departmental public bodies probably, audit firms, in that sort of space. And then the model proposes that actually that there may be more offensive approaches to data, where you're looking to exploit the data more, looking at the value, multiple versions of the truth. Multiple versions of the truth, meaning actually data has context. And in this area, you may find organizations like retail businesses, Tesco, I presume we don't have anybody from Tesco in the room, but Tesco Club Card, that's a really interesting business. So Tesco, I was talking a little while ago to one of the data leaders in Tesco Club Card. They estimate the UK population at 10% higher than the ONS. They dispute Sir Ian's numbers of 69. Actually, they say our business of Tesco is run on an assumption that the UK has 75 million, and that's all part of their thinking here, their offensive data capabilities driving their business. And then kind of wildly out on the left, you might have Cambridge Analytica or all that. So this has been really useful, not because it helps us with data maturity. And if you talk to Phil about this, what Phil will say is, look, this all works in harmony, Rob. This all works in harmony because it's all based on the same core foundations. There's no tension here. And I agree with Phil. You know, from a data capability perspective, that this is a yin and yang model. But what's interesting for me is the questions this raises about risk, our organizational approach to risk, skills, staffing, and culture. And that has been some of the useful things that we've worked through at Jisc. When we took our board through this, we landed right in the middle. We needed both. We're a broad data organization. And so that has questions for us as a business around how we approach those skills and culture challenges. And a shout out, by the way, to my colleagues in the Jisc HR team, Dee Jones and other colleagues in governance who've done some outstanding work in starting to pull together some good cultural foundations through our induction and training material. So we then moved on to build a data strategy with our board. And for Jisc, data strategy spans, and this is to answer Richard's question, Activate Learning. What does Jisc do with data? Quite a lot, actually. Our data strategy, I'll start at the top. The key thing we sought to do when we brought our data strategy together was post-merger we merged the HESA organization, which was a standalone charity, into the Jisc business, bringing together all of the Jisc capabilities and the HESA capabilities under one umbrella. And working with Heidi and the board, the key thing we sought to do was to make sure we were building an organization that was greater than the sum of the parts, to try to make sure these different lines work together to add value. So Jisc's data strategy spans 3 key areas. The first is our statutory data functions, the HESA business. We count students there, basically. We make it a lot more complicated than that because it's a lot of quality rules and a vast number of fields and millions of students. But you know, if somebody asks me in the elevator, what do we do? What do? I say I count students. That's what we do, and staff and estates and other things. And we do that using various statutory powers. We do that for our funding bodies. We take instructions on how we do that and what we collect in that branch of our business from our funders and our statutory bodies. So a lot of what colleagues who work on the HESA line of business do is we work to negotiate, influence, and harmonise data standards across the UK and with our statutory customers, helping them ask sensible questions of the poor people who have to supply the data into the student record. But there is a lot of work still to do in that area. We have a sort of second branch to Jisc's data strategy, which is all of our commercial products and services, things you may buy from us that require us to charge you, actually, to receive those services. Things like Heidi Plus, learning analytics, tailored data sets, things like that, that feed a whole ecosystem of data across our sector. And then the last branch of our data strategy looks at what a traditional data officer role might be, which is actually how we're using data to run our business, the foundations and skills internally, and how we are data-driven in our decision-making. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the statutory side of what we do, and then I'm going to hand over to Phil to tell you a little bit more about the direction we're taking in the other branches of our data strategy and our business. So, as I said earlier, this operation, the HESA operation, is here. We count students. We're here to support you, ultimately, our members who pay us for the privilege of giving us data. Now, a lot of that is necessary. We must collect the data in order to operate funding regimes and regulatory regimes of our statutory bodies. But we're also here trying to add value back. We recently, we started a couple of years ago in the most difficult place, the student record, with our Data Futures program that went live in 22. And that was really, really tricky. And we continue to invest in that area. It's a really key part of what we do, to continue to invest. And again, this year, to improve that student data collection mechanism. But we're not stopping there. We're rolling that out, that technology and capability out to our other data collections. We're also making significant changes to the AOR, the transnational education data, and this year a major review on the staff record. All of these will feed into and have fundamental changes to the way we operate our statutory services, potentially. Colleagues, I think Charlie is talking to you later on about graduate outcomes. Dan, I know, is going to talk to you later on about knowledge exchange and the really interesting work we are doing and have done recently in establishing a new spin-out register of university spin-outs. There's a lot more work to do in that space to really understand what's going on, what are these spin-out organisations, where is the IP going, where is the money going. So a lot going on in the KE space. And I think we've got Alice and Victoria also later on going to talk to you about how the estates record fits into all of that in a presentation later on. The other thing that we've got on this year is a is looking at how we present data on the website. So we present an awful lot of information on the HESA website, but you have to be pretty brave or a data professional to really penetrate it. There are over 100 tables in the student data output every year. It's vast. It's a really vast resource. And what we'd like to do is to make it easier to access and improve the way that data is presented. So that too is something that we'll be getting to this year. So that's our statutory line. I'm going to hand over to Phil.
Thank you, Rob, and good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. So now let's look at the second of those areas, the data foundations roadmap. And as Rob said, this is essentially we're on the same journey as yourselves. We have an agreed roadmap. It spans the 6 areas shown on the slide: architecture, discovery, BI, culture, governance, and mastering. And this looks very much like other people's data strategies. As we said, we're all in this together. We're all in the same journey. To be honest, so far, we've made most progress on the defensive side of Rob's model that he presented earlier. Whereas for us, but we need to deliver our strategy, we need to make progress in both areas. So right now, we're just thinking about how we can recast the vision for the offensive, how we can really de-silo, bring together, leverage all of our data to give us really rich, informed, data-informed decisions. And personally, I'm very much looking forward to hearing Monica Jones's talk later on how they're going about this at the University of Leeds. And now the third of those areas is, as Rob's already preluded, our data products and services. Here they all are in one place. So starting with services that are really built around the HESA data, but they're adding additional value to that. So Heidi Plus dashboards and visualizations, interactive insights, bespoke data sets constructed, tailored data sets, bespoke data sets constructed to answer your problems, and interactive insights. And we've got a nice demonstration of interactive insights. I would encourage you to go and listen to Scotty Dixon later. He'll be talking about an interactive insight tool that gives insight into the transition from undergraduate to PGT, which could be very important in terms of planning and market research and things of that nature. And I think most people in the room will probably be quite familiar with those. Whoops, sorry. The next area then is Jisc's Learning Analytics Service. And very pleased today that today is the official launch of Jisc's enhanced learning analytics platform. Faster, quicker, slicker, more robust. A really good way to use data to improve student success, and also actually out of the box, a UKVI compliant attendance monitoring system as well to boot, all delivered at community value. So do go and listen to James Hodgkin, Jim Keane, a couple of talks actually on the bill that relate to this area, and find out more about that. We've recently re-engineered our online services tool. It goes from strength to strength. It's hugely widely used across the sector by staff and students alike. A lot of student projects, dissertations, etc., using that tool. We also have a number of survey-based and diagnostic-based toolkits and framework, building digital capability, digital experience insights, digital elevation tool. Do talk to people. We've got, as has already been pointed out, we have a lot of experts in the room from Jisc, data professionals, relationship managers. Do talk to them about these tools. And one tool in particular that I wanted to draw attention to and framework is the data maturity framework. This is particularly focused at the area of data and data management, the area that we're all in this room particularly interested in. Do go and see the demonstration downstairs. Do go and hear Felicity Bingham's lightning talk. Find out how you can get involved in shaping this tool, which we can all shape together to help us all on our respective journeys. Jisc's got a really long, rich tradition in providing tools to support libraries and learning resources and research. And whilst those aren't reflected so directly on today's agenda, to be honest, there's only so much you can pack into one day's agenda. We have packed in a lot. There are people here today who know all about this stuff. So if you're interested in this area, again, do find people, ask. We will find someone who can speak to you about that. Heidi's already mentioned HEAD, the degree verification service, and Prospects itself. It is essentially a data-driven service, information to support students embarking on their careers, to support universities' career service. But HEAD in particular, the degree verification service, it's upholding the integrity of the UK degree. What could be more important than that? That's a really important data service that Jisc provides. International student modelling. So this is quite an interesting one. This is actually an R&D project at the moment. We've been doing some new kinds of analysis, a more inferential analysis of both open data sources and the HESA data than we have done historically. We've got some new angles on the UK's soft power. It does a much deeper sort of dive using data from Wikimedia, etc. That really speaks well of how the UK's stands on the world stage in terms of the reputation of its higher education. Also, we're doing some very interesting research on the pathways, the more and more complex pathways that international students are taking. They don't just come over to the UK, start in the first year of a degree and go through to the end. Increasingly, they're possibly doing foundation years and year one or year two in their home countries as transnational education, perhaps, coming over to the UK, maybe going back, then coming back again to do a postgraduate taught qualification or something like that kind. Now, if the country and the institutions that start to understand those new patterns, those new trends of the more discerning, more flexible international student, it's going to be, this has been a tricky area for the last couple of years. People who get their heads around that data and what's going on there are really going to be an advantage. And the country that does that best is also going to be an advantage. So do go and hear Janet Ilieva, do go and hear Scott Wilson talking about this later if that's an area you're interested in. And finally, possibly, the thing that a lot of people are most interested in, where there's been huge change over the last couple of years, and that's in artificial intelligence. So I'm very pleased that I'll be presenting, introducing Michael Webb, who's our Director of AI, as the final keynote. And amongst other things, he'll be talking about Jisc's AI service, how it's encouraging you to use AI appropriately, ethically, as part of your human-led education. Michael is literally shaping the national agenda in how AI is being used in education. I'm really looking forward to hearing him at the end of the day. So look, there's our portfolio of products and services. Are you making the most of these in the room? Okay, do you know about all of these? Do you know about all of these? Because if not, today is your chance to find out. Look in the demo zone, talk to our staff, talk to our relationship managers. These are your tools, this delivered with community value. Please use them to best effect. And I think that's a nice segue into this next slide. That, to be honest, as long as I've been doing this job, the FE sector has been in a tight financial position. The HE's financial position has kind of fluctuated, but right now, HE is also in a tight position. We're all in this together from a financial point of view, as well as from all of the other perspectives. It's more important than ever that we work together, we collaborate. So I'm very pleased that, for example, that Heidi is a member of Universities UK's newly launched Transformation and Efficiency Task Force. I'm sure if people call her Heidi later during the day, she'll tell you about the important work going on there. And Jisc itself has released a really important report on collaboration for a sustainable future. People in this room will not be surprised at all that all of the, not all, but a very high proportion of the opportunities identified in the RAP report relate to data or are based to a greater or larger extent on data. People in this room will also be not surprised that one of the main barrier that's identified is a lack of standardization, is a lack of standard practice. If we're going to navigate this financial issue, we have to solve these problems, and we're only going to do this by working together. And I think the people in the room today are key audience. So finally, for me, before I hand back to Rob, there's not been a lot of research done on how data is used in higher education since the HEDIT programme, which came to an end in 2017. We did manage to find one piece of research that's been done from Komljenovic et al. And I'll just give you a minute just to read through their key finding. So that conclusion, even at the highest level of the senior management team, we have all this data, but no one really knows what to do with it. Does that ring true to you? Well, it does to me. And if that's true, that's a big problem for our sector. Who can solve that? Us. We're the people in this room. We're the only people that can solve it, and we can only do it by working together. Rob, I'll hand back to you now. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Phil. So where next? So we've heard a bit about some of the challenges. We've heard a little bit about some of the approaches that we've been taking to unpack these issues. And we've heard a lot about some of the services, the community value services that Jisc offers that we'd love you to get more involved in. I'd like to focus a little bit now on our approach, dare I say, somewhat our obsession with burden. And if I may just wind the clock back, actually, quarter of a century, to a Better Regulation Task Force, which was Peter Mandelson's outfit, and a report from that task force on easing the burden of education. Dan, I think you've got hard copy, but you've stopped carrying it around now. Not in. Some of you may have been in the sector, in the higher education sector, that is, when this was published, and know all about this. If you browse this report, go to section 8 of this report, you'll find a catalogue of data burdens, a catalogue of complaints from our sector of data burden. And it makes really sobering reading, and it's pretty familiar, I have to say. Some things have moved on from where we were in 2003. Student identifiers are slightly better, but we're not there yet. Some things are as distant now as they were then, like combining track with the financial return. But I just wanted to pause a minute and think about burden, because a focus on burden worries me. I think it's dangerous, because it doesn't help us determine, as data professionals, it doesn't help us determine where we want to be, why we're here, and what we want to achieve. There is hope, though, in this report. This report does also refer to how we put to good use the data that we have already. And we do, actually. That's something to celebrate. 100 tables in the student data output. The report also talks about the opportunity for rationalization. And I don't think that's a complete horror story, although I don't think we're anywhere near where we might want to be. Rationalization, we can all agree that collecting data once and using it multiple times makes sense, intellectually makes sense, but actually it's really difficult to do. Involves community, involves change, it involves persuading people who collect different data to not collect different data. But there are reasons to be optimistic in that area. A big ecosystem of data is supported through the Jisc Tailored Dataset service. Hundreds of customers collect data from Jisc who may otherwise be asking our members for that data directly. And opportunities that we are following up, things like the GMC. Jisc collects data on behalf of the GMC to save that being supplied by providers. So I'm just going to leave you with one last thought on data value. And when I think about data strategy, this is what I think about. What value can we deliver as data professionals? What value can we extract from data, and how do we see the value of data? This is something I think we can really get stuck into, and I look forward to connecting with as many of you as possible look out for staff with their pink lanyards, because we'd love to know your thoughts and ideas in this space. Covered a lot of ground. I'm now overrunning, so I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Liam. Thank you very much.